I swear, at the next job I have, I'm definitely telling them I have kids because the parents at my company have a free pass to leave whenever, to be absent whenever, to log on whenever. And I love that for them. But those of us that don't have children, hello? And honestly, why not just lie? Corporate America, having a job, all of it's fake anyway. Why not just lie until you're happy?
I was talking to my husband the other day, and a lot of his coworkers are in their early 20s. No kids. A couple of them have kids, but most of them don't have kids, right? So my husband had the mindset of like, well, they don't have kids. Why should they get all the overtime? Why should they get first dibs? They don't have kids. Why should they? And I had to stop him. And I was like, listen, whether someone has children or not is irrelevant to who should get first dibs on things. Management as a whole should make the workplace fair for everyone across the board. It's management's job to do that for you guys. There should be equal opportunity for everyone, regardless of their personal circumstance. And I'm saying that as someone, we have 3 children. And I had to stop him. And once I started saying that, he was like, oh yeah, actually, you're right. And I'm like, yeah, because here's the thing, is when you get in the mindset of, well, I have kids, that takes priority. It takes priority to you. Not everyone has children. But also, instead of pointing fingers at people who have children and people who don't have children, let's start flipping it around and turning it on these corporations and making sure they make it fair and there's equal opportunity for paid time off and taking days and overtime and certain days worked on the schedule. No one should take priority over anyone unless they have some kind of disability kind of accommodation thing. We need to normalize this. That's all I'm saying.
A child-free woman is refusing to trade shifts and work on Thanksgiving so that her co-worker can spend the holiday with her kids. The child-free woman posted to Reddit explaining that her job is one of those 365-day-a-year type of operations, and while it's common to work on holidays, she's worked there for a couple of years, and this is the first time she's been granted Thanksgiving Day off, so she's very excited to have that day off to celebrate with her family. But there's also this informal expectation that people without kids will cover shifts so that parents can celebrate with their families. Recently, a coworker named June asked this woman if she would cover her Thanksgiving Day shift so that she could be with her kids, and it did not sit well with this woman. This woman is newly engaged, and their families are doing a blended holiday for the first time, so she told June no, as she already had Thanksgiving Day plans. June was annoyed, though, and told this woman she was breaking the informal code of the office. This woman spoke to her mentor about the situation, and her mentor took June's side, but this woman insists that the expectation isn't fair. Why are people without kids penalized and expected to work on holidays? June is the one who chose to have kids and chose a profession where she would have to work on holidays. In a 2022 Resume Lab study, 72% of respondents said they had noticed that child-free workers were treated unfairly because they didn't have kids. In a workplace, child-free people should be given the same treatment as people with kids. It's fine that June wants to spend Thanksgiving with her kids and ask this woman to cover for her, but this woman also has every right to decline and have her decision be respected. And if this company really wants parents to spend holidays with their children, they will step up and figure out a way to make it happen rather than placing that burden on their child-free employees. Because child-free people have friends and families and like to celebrate holidays too.
The coworkers that are still there, to the coworkers who are left covering for the people who have kids. I'm sick of covering for my coworkers who had kids.
As a Gen Z who obviously doesn't have kids, but I worked in an office with a lot of millennial and Gen Xer coworkers who did have kids, I fully agree with this video. I feel like the people in the office who had kids had so much more freedom and leeway to just schlep off work onto those of us who didn't have kids. And I fully agree that we should give benefits to people with kids. When trouble arises, they should have total leeway to go and take care of it. That is important, but I also feel like it was a total double standard for those of us who didn't have kids, especially those people who never plan on having kids at any point. So at my last office job, my boss and really anyone who had kids was allowed to go and work from home anytime trouble came up with the kids that they had to go and handle. And I fully support that. That's really important, and that should be a thing everywhere. However, those of us who didn't have kids were literally almost never allowed to work from home. The only time I was allowed to work from home was when I was dying of sickness and they refused to give me the day off even though I was in urgent care that day. It was was really questionable, but my boss was one of those super out of touch millennials, and for a while I thought they were Gen Xers actually, who believed that people couldn't work from home, even though they all went to work from home constantly. And then one day I discovered every time they went to go and work from home, which was very frequently, they were really just mostly blowing off work that day. I'm like, no, Karen, not everyone does that. Some people actually want to keep their jobs. And this affected everyone in the office because one day my boss went to work from home, and I genuinely believed she was working from home because she said she had to work from home that day, and she blamed it on the kids again for some reason. And don't ask me why, but our entire marketing department shared the same email inbox, which was a really good idea for if someone went out of office, right? So then you can handle their emails for them very easily. But it worked off this daily nightmare system where we all just had to guess which emails we were supposed to respond to personally. And it was a general mess, but I knew what emails I had to cover, and I knew what emails my boss had to cover, and that's all I needed to know. That day I noticed a big email come in from a local news station asking for a direct quote from the company on something. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. That's like a huge publicity moment for the company. But my boss's department is that area, so I'll let her answer that because she's working from home today. So obviously I didn't respond to the email. And finally, a few days later, when my boss is back working in the office, a few days later, working a few feet away from me, I hear her snap at me, Andra, did you see this email come in from the news station? And I went, yeah, I thought that was really cool. How did that end up going? And she got angry at me. She's like, well, no one responded to it, so we just missed a huge opportunity. And I was like, well, I put it in your inbox because you were working from home. Like, Miss Girl, if you had told me you were out of office, I would have obviously responded to it. Because listen, I am the biggest advocate to blowing off work. If you need a day to blow off work, I'm your girl, okay? Contact me. I will cover you with any excuse you want. But you gotta give me a heads up here. But yeah, then the CEO was mad at her for it, and she needed someone to blame, so she blamed it on me, of course. And she just added it to the never-ending list of things that she actually kept messing up and then forgetting about, so then she would blame it on me, and then I kept getting formally written up for all of her mistakes and yelled at constantly. My favorite one was when my boss made me start crying, and then she told me to get it together so people don't see me crying. But obviously I left that company shortly after for toxic environment-related reasons. That all these millennials and Gen Xers who decide to have kids are given all this leeway to like work from home and take time off. And the rest of us aren't even allowed to take like a mental health day where we can work from home at nearly the same frequency. To add insult to injury, that was a mental health care company, and I just love a little bit of irony to top off a story.
A single woman was asked by her boss to find it in her heart to cancel her vacation so that a coworker could take her kids to Disney.
Fuck that boss. You know what? Fuck the coworker too. Let's get into it. Child-free coworker asked off for the holidays well in advance because, prepared. 2 days before she is supposed to go on this vacation, her bags are literally already packed. Her boss approaches her and says, hey, can you please find it in your heart to not go on your trip anymore because your coworker who's a mom and has kids wants to take her kids to Disney World over the holiday break, and we can't afford to lose you both. And this is the fucking kicker. So clearly the child-free coworker says, no, I've planned this in advance. My bags are literally packed. I'm going to go. The boss retaliates by saying, fine, but you have to tell your coworker who's a mother that you're ruining the trip. Which she does. She goes to the coworkers like, hey, I'm sorry, but I'm taking the trip. At which point the mom breaks down in tears, starts screaming at her about how she's a terrible person, doesn't have a heart. All because the mom completely failed to plan ahead. I would 100% be looking for a new job.
So yeah, this is something that comes up commonly, that when you're the childless one in the workplace, because you don't have children, that you're expected to like work late, to cover shifts, to be the last one that has the pick of the holidays, to cover like Christmases, work at Christmas and all the rest of it. And quite often what I'll hear is from my clients, or just from people in the community, and actually it's happened to me as well, is that people will say, oh, well, you don't have kids, so, you don't really have any responsibilities. You don't have kids, so you can work late. You don't have kids, so Christmas isn't important. Just because childless people don't have children, it doesn't mean they don't have other responsibilities. And especially if you're single and childless, sometimes those holidays are super important because you need to be able to spend time with the family that you have. Especially if you live alone for most of the year. It's all relative in the end, and childless people are important and valid too.
I'm leaving at 4 p.m. and I don't care what anyone says.
I'm always wondering how this is going to work moving forward, because most of the older people who always want to be the first ones to have holidays off say that they want to spend time with their family and their kids and maybe their grandkids. but their kids are probably like in their 20s, even if they have kids, and they most likely have to work because older people want to take off first. So if you're making me go to work, but my parents are taking off to go spend time with me, huh?
What the fuck are you talking about?
Quick question, did you happen to fall down and smack your little head on the pavement? Me using my last PTO day because my 1-year-old has a fever. Also me realizing Karen in accounting with no kids gets the same days off. Make it make sense. The way it makes sense is that your child-free coworkers also matter and deserve days off. The way it makes sense is that there are emergencies that don't pertain to children that would force people to use that PTO. And listen, I know in the caption she says, this isn't about people without kids. It is very clearly about people without kids. This is not about the system, because the video isn't complaining about the system. The video is complaining specifically about people without children getting the same privileges at work that you have as a parent. This reminds me of that video from a while ago where a company said that people with kids could leave because their office was about to be under like a flood advisory, but if you didn't have kids, you had to work out the rest of the day. Stop treating your child-free coworkers like they're disposable, like they don't matter, and like they are worth less than you.
Yep, so childlessness in the workplace is very often kind of ignored, invalidated, and childless people are often excluded in the workplace. So not only like socially excluded, because there'll be lots of events and things at work like baby showers, lots of conversations with people exchanging pictures of their kids and stuff, which of course is fine, but the whole point is it can be extremely one-sided. And childless people of course are not included in these conversations, and often they may not also be asked about their personal lives. The other thing is that childless people are expected quite often to work late or cover shifts, even at times like Christmas, because they have no family and responsibilities, or that's what people seem to think or even say sometimes. So yes, it does feel scary, but it's definitely a layer of diversity that workplaces need to be aware about. This work is important, so best wishes to you.
This is part 2 of When Your Work Punishes You for Being Child-Free. Watch part 1 for reference. So the meeting took place first thing this morning with the manager, the head of the HR, another HR manager, and 2 labor attorney generals from the legal department and the head of my department. Legal invited them on the fly this morning, and 13 child-free co-workers that are with me. Started the meeting by explaining why we're gathered here today. The head of the department was dumbfounded. He clearly had no idea what the manager tried to pull off. Legal went through all the rules of the discussion, so we had to wait to speak. I was first to make my case, and my approach was simple. Show proof. Show policy, explain why the policy was violated and therefore can't be enforced. Boring, yeah, I know, but if that didn't work, I had other points on reserve to bring up. Side note later. So I really wanted to go all out and lose my filter and say what I was really thinking, but as we know, that would get me nowhere. So I presented the manager's memo and company overtime policy, which clearly states that the mandatory overtime must be 1, mandatory for all members of the department, hourly and salaried, and 2, members must work equal number of OT hours, and 3, must be approved by the head of the department. If any of these conditions are not met, managers can't impose it and should ask volunteers to work OT instead. My argument was simple. Manager didn't follow the policy and purposely targeted child-free people. The highlights of this sheet show are followed. Legal asked the head of the department if he approved the memo. The answer was angry no. I could tell he was livid at the manager. So in my head, I'm laughing my A off, right? Legal asked the manager for her side of the story, and the answer was, I wasn't aware of this policy. So I interjected with, I find that hard to believe when 3 weeks ago we did an extensive review with that policy being the main objective and you were heavily involved with each step. The head of HR chimes in with, I can attest to that. I worked with the manager on this project. So let's be truthful, please. So in my head, I'm screaming, yeah, take that, B! So the manager is like, I didn't think the policy would apply in this case. Y'all, it took all of my willpower not to cuss her out. All of a sudden, her memory came back and now she's aware of the policy. So the legal stepped in with, are you saying that you, the manager responsible for enforcing policies, honestly thought that those policies don't apply to you? Ah, yes. So the head of the department stepped in with to the manager is still angry AF. You were blatantly wrong here. There's no need to try and justify it. So the round one is won, right? Next were some of the Childfree who shared emails between them and her showing your standard crappy manager behaviors and lack of accountability. So she just kept repeating, that's not why we're here today. It didn't stop them from going on though. This was very enjoyable to watch. Then one of the other Childfree asked to speak, and let me tell you, this guy showed up with the receipts. He spent the entire night creating an analyst for freaking pie chart and all to illustrate how many projects were done by the 13 Childfree as compared to the 19 non-Childfree, and how much time was put in by us versus how much vacation and sick time was approved for us versus them for last year. So I was shook. His analysis showed that 13 of us did close to 16% of all the work, while the 19 of them did only 40-ish. And don't even get me started on the rest of the stats. This guy wiped the floor with the manager, and I truly hope that he gets a raise because he is my hero. You know what her response was? This company promotes work-life balance and wants families to have to spend time with each other, so it's normal that employees with kids get time to do just that. I couldn't hold myself back. This is me. Yes, you're absolutely right that the company does that, but you're lacking here is the understanding that family includes other people, not just children. In case you were unaware, all of us have families too. So HR interjected with, I believe we have enough information here. The Childfrees, myself included, were asked to leave the meeting so that they can deliberate. We were told that they will circle back with us later in the afternoon. So later comes around and we're invited to a meeting, and this time it's all the same people, but the no manager. So the head of the department apologized that this ever happened and thanked us for doing the right thing and bringing it to their attention. They threw in a few company lines about equal treatment, yada, 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 and told us we'll be taking over the managerial duties for the time being. Legal added that the memo is null and void and made clear that we will not be working those insane hours. In case you're wondering, the manager was offline for the rest. We don't know what happened, but who cares? Because we won! Woohoo! Yes, I knew that stuff was illegal anyways, you guys. End of the story. So what do y'all think about that? I feel like that was a great outcome, and that manager knew she was dead wrong for doing what she did. Anyway, I'm so glad that the outcome was in the favor of the Childfree because that was absolutely unfair of her to do that, to put all this responsibility on them because they don't have kids, but act like we don't have families. We have families, we have friends, we have lives. Just because we don't have children doesn't mean we're not busy and we can't do some of the things. So I am so excited for that whole situation and the outcome, and that how the managers and all of them came through the HR department. So it was good for them, you guys. Solid win.
Is this what you guys feel like to be childless and in the workforce? Because riddle me this. I just picked up this 4 to 6 week long accounting project that falls in line with my son being gone for 4 to 6 weeks with his dad. And I'm just going to wake up at the time that it takes me to do my makeup and my hair and then just walk right out the door. Only breakfast for myself, grab my coffee and no $20 Starbucks runs because it's not 2 drinks and a cake pop, and straight to work. No school pickup, no grandma drop off, straight to work, do my job. Whenever I'm done, head home. Not when I have to leave home, just head home whenever I'm done. And then dinner for 1, maybe take my dog out, and then just do it all over again and not worry if the school is going to call me, not worry if like there's stuff, not worry if I'm making it home for like bedtime. Like this is weird. I don't know how I feel about it. I can get how it's liberating, but riddle me this. Is this what it feels like? Because it's feeling a little lonely for me.
So I think a lot of us these days are having the really necessary conversations around childcare benefits and paid family leave at work. And those conversations absolutely need to be happening. Those benefits need to exist. But something I see discussed less is what happens to the coworkers that are still there, to the coworkers who are left covering for the people who have kids. This is an Ask a Boss advice column from The Cut called "I'm sick of covering for my coworkers who had kids." Okay, let's get into it. The first thing the letter writer wants to stress is that they are not upset that their coworkers are having kids. They are not upset that their coworkers are taking paid time off. They should. And they write, "That's not the problem. I'm glad we have a robust parental leave policy. The issue is," they write, "that I'm now being asked to handle more after-hours work events when before they weren't my responsibility. Now that she's back, I'm still being asked to cover the events in her city because she can't find childcare. I have a full social life and plans most days of the week. It shouldn't matter what I'm doing. My time outside of work is no less important than anyone else's just because I don't have children. This is such an important point, that because our society prioritizes people who are partnered, people who have children, those of us who might be single or not have children, or let's say caretaking for a parent, are made to feel like our lives are less worthy, that whatever we have going on is not as important. So what do you actually do here? How do you stand up for yourself while also not throwing the coworker with the kids under the bus? So what Allison, who is the advice columnist, writes is sit down with your boss and basically say, and she writes in quotes here, I was able to cover events in City X when you were on leave, but it's not something I can do long term. I wanted to give you a heads up so you can make other plans. Ooh, that stresses me out just reading it. And she says, it's possible that your boss will tell you, sorry, your job description has changed. This is required. In which case you get to decide if you want to stay or leave. But she says having this conversation with your boss is really important because it takes the onus off of you and puts it onto your boss, onto management, and onto the company. And I want to read this quote because I think it's so good. Policies and practices that only consider the needs of parents while leaving everyone else behind only serve to pit parents and non-parents against each other, which conveniently shifts attention away from employers' responsibility to make jobs sustainable and compatible with people's real lives. So it is not about you and your coworkers having beef, you being upset that they have children and are left to cover. No, it is that the company should be figuring out how to deal with this new situation, that they should be hiring more people, that they should be rearranging how people work. I find this utterly interesting and I really want to know, have you been in this situation before? Have you had the talk with your boss? How did it go? Please share in the comments.
If you don't have kids, if you do not have kids right now, you are in the corporate summer sweet spot. Let me explain. The corporate summer sweet spot needs to have these three components. It needs to be August, you need to work with people with kids, and you need to work with lots of people in Europe. After this week, maybe next week, camp ends for a lot of people, and then if you work with parents, they have to go on a vacation. There's nothing else to do. Second, if you work with people in Europe, if you have a department there, or a major headquarters there, you're good. They're off for 3 weeks at least, and they've mentally been off since mid-July. You're sending emails left and right, you're getting out of office messages, your meetings are getting postponed. You're in the corporate summer sweet spot if you have no kids. This is a terrible time to take a vacation. Chill out. Now I know it depends on what you're doing in the industry and blah blah blah, but come on, for the most part you're good. You took your vacation already. I would not go on vacation in August. Take 3-day weekends. You can catch up on reading, chores, actual work. You're in the corporate summer sweet spot.
Honestly, the worst part about being child-free is having no way to tell people that you're getting laid. You know, because parents will be like, oh, we conceived little Braxton on our honeymoon, and then people are like, oh yeah, we're trying for a baby. But it's like, okay, and I'm getting sometimes, and then every now and then, but I'm not telling people that. Do you know what I mean? Happy for you guys. I get to brag about it. Real jealous.